Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consol, your host. Two quick things before introducing you to my guest. First, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast by clicking on the follow button and also clicking on the bell icon so you're alerted to each new edition of the program. Second, in addition to being the producer of this podcast and interviewing novelists, I am a novelist myself. I've written 4 books, 3 novels, and 1 short story collection. In the episode notes, you will find a short link to my Amazon page and all 4 of those titles. Now, on with our program. In the spotlight is Kevin Moore, the author of The Book of Souls. The Book of Souls is a mystical ghost story, and it is the first in a series of books featuring protagonist Jack Kelly and his paranormal abilities. The sequel to that book is The Book of Demons. Stop and think Harry Potter meets The Exorcist. Wrap your head around that one. Moore also wrote a book titled Christmas Stories, which contains 7 original short stories. His play Conversations from the Sports Arena was performed at the HBO Theater in Hollywood. His first children's picture book, titled Me and My Shadow, was released in 2021. Meanwhile, Moore will continue the Jack Kelly paranormal saga in his 3rd book, which will be released in 2025. That is to say, this year. Now, in addition to his writing, or tangential to his writing, Moore practices lucid dreaming. That is a practice that he uses to help him with his writing. He is also a certified yoga teacher and an advanced Reiki practitioner. I happen to mention to Kevin that I've been practicing yoga myself for more than 40 years. Reiki is something I've heard of many times over the years, and once I knew what it was, we're gonna have him explain what Reiki is and what his purpose is. We're also going to talk about spirituality. What is the role of spirituality in writing? What is is it a spiritual practice? Writing as a spiritual practice? For some people, the answer to that is absolutely yes. For other people, they might say, well, that's something set apart. We'll talk about the spirit world. We'll also talk about the power of love. And love takes so many different forms. What about the love of writing? Is that essential to making sure that we maximize, that we reach our full potential, full realization of our writing practice? A lot to go over here. Kevin Moore, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. That sounds like a very interesting conversation we're going to have, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, we're all preloaded and ready to go, and what better place to start than The Book of Souls? This is your first novel, The Book of Souls, and Jack Kelly is your protagonist, as I mentioned at the top, and he's got paranormal abilities. Talk about your protagonist. Talk about Jack Kelly and what paranormal abilities he possesses.
Okay, so Jack Kelly, I think most writers would say this. I had read an article a while ago, and Hemingway and Fitzgerald supposedly differed and argued about is your character. Are all your characters some part of you, or are they, somebody that you're, emulating them in the novel or a short story? Is it somebody you've met and that's what you're doing? For me, especially with Jack Kelly is very close to me because in the novel he is a 13-year-old boy. Well, he wakes up as a 13-year-old boy after having a near-death experience, and in his head, he was a 47-year-old man with 3 kids and a wife. And now he woke up, and he's 13 years old. He's in the hospital recovering from a fall in a condemned building, which he wasn't supposed to be in New York. And he's in 8th grade in Catholic school. Now, I went to Catholic school, and I grew up in New York. So Jack Kelly, there's a lot of that there. That's a lot like me, only I don't have as powerful paranormal skills as he does.
Did you go through some experience, though, Kevin? Did you have some kind of experience in your childhood that opened some gateway?
I did. I always felt because, I always felt like I was always fascinated by ghosts. From an early age, I always liked things that were, went bump in the night, kind of thing, the scary stuff. And I did feel like I had some paranormal experiences, but not to that. Like, I didn't wake up as a 13-year-old boy with that strong of an ability that Jack has.
What are his abilities?
I did. Well, he's learning them. When he wakes up as a 13-year-old boy, he's got to go through physical rehabilitation because
because of the accident.
Because of the accident, they didn't think he was going to walk again. They didn't, so he starts to get his physical stuff together. But they all think that he's damaged. The trauma to his brain has damaged the fact that he keeps talking to his father about his wife Catherine and his son, and 2 sons and his daughter, and he knows all of these things about them. He knows their birthdays and that they play soccer and their likes and stuff. But he can't. He's looking in the mirror and he's going, I can't argue with the fact that I am 13. But something has happened here, and that is part of the drama of the novel. Is like the psychiatrists have got him to believe that he believes he had a family because of the fall, but somewhere deep in his soul, he knows that's not true. So he knows
what's not true.
That he did. It wasn't the fall. He does have a family.
And is he able to identify? Now, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give spoiler alerts or what, but does he do these people actually exist in terms of he says who they are, and then the authorities check, and it's like, sure enough, there's this woman who says that who he says is his wife, and this kid who he says is his son. They actually exist.
No, they do not. The authorities do not do that. What they do is they see this boy who's had this terrible accident, and they're saying, no, this is not going to help you in your life. You've got to learn how to walk again. You've got to learn how to live again. And you're going to be married. You're going to have kids, but that is not real. And you've got to remember, his father is a very devout Catholic. So he doesn't believe so much in the woo-woo.
So his father is there. His father's there at the hospital, and
yes, when he wakes up. But his mother has passed away, so he doesn't have a mother. It's just him and his father, and his father is there when he wakes up. And so his father is, also frightened by this story that he wakes up with.
Now, can you say what his paranormal abilities are, or is that kind of a spoiler thing?
No. I can definitely tell you what his paranormal abilities are, and they sort of come to him. The first time he's down in the subway, he starts hearing, he starts picking up inner monologues from people that are alive, but he also starts picking up the ghosts in that subway station. There, for example, I don't think I'm giving anything away here, but this is the start of his awakening. There is a woman there that keeps throwing herself in front of the train, but she's dead. She just doesn't realize she's dead. And so she's going to commit suicide. And she keeps doing the same thing every day. And he realizes, oh, no, this is not in the moment. This has already happened. And he's able to get her to understand that she's dead and to leave, like her spirit to leave that train station because it's trapped there.
So your protagonist is a 13-year-old boy to start.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about the Book of Souls. What's the Book of Souls about, if you were to characterize it? What's your dust cover summary?
Okay, I'll give you exactly what I was trying to accomplish with the book. the paranormal is fun and interesting, but it's really about fear. It's about, like so many people are so afraid of that kind of stuff. And Jack has spent most of his life in fear because his mother died when he was a very young child. So he's always been afraid that his father is going to somehow die. And he's always waiting for him when he's coming back from work or from the bar. And he gets into trouble. The really subtext of the paranormal issues is fear.
So that's a universal story. That's a universal story right there. There isn't a human being on the planet, unless they're lying, who doesn't understand and actually live through fear in one form or another.
I believe that too. I mean, I'm sure you've had your fears, and I've had fears that I've had to overcome in life. And still do. I still have fears. I have a son who's, from birth had a lot of health issues and almost, passed away multiple times. I did have a mother who died when I was a teenager. I had a brother who passed away. So my fear is not of dying itself for me, but I've always been afraid of people getting sick around me and passing away. And so that's Jack's fear, is that, and what he has to how he starts to overcome all of his fears are through the fact that he actually, for lack of a better term, and he sees dead people.
Right.
And one of the fun aspects of this is now he's back and he's trying to get acclimated back into 8th grade in a strict Catholic school, and he finds himself constantly looking out the window. And this is very truthful for me because I went to school on 22nd Street in New York City, and across the street was this beautiful Art Deco building, and I was so fascinated by it and the windows, and I used to be able to see the people walking around in there. And so that's how Jack gets involved with the ghost of Casper Green Street, who's aware that he's dead, but he is not a ghost that's going to go away. He's an evil spirit.
Now, go ahead, finish that thought.
Yeah. No, so that's the fear. Like, Jack starts to go, like, instead of hiding under a rock, he starts to pursue these things and becomes friends with. He starts working for the man, Peter Cairo, who is living in that apartment building, and Jack goes to sell some raffle tickets just to meet him, but he realizes the guy that he sees in the window is not the guy who actually owns the apartment. And that's how it starts to become the ghost story of Casper Green Street, who's a famous painter, think like kind of in the Andy Warhol kind of fame. Uh-huh. And it unravels. And there's a lot. There's art in here. I mean, it's a fun book because you're.
No, there's a lot. You said there's a lot. Do you ever worry? Is there too much? Was that a calculation you had to make that, hey, am I giving the readers too much and I'm not creating a clear, strong, straight channel? The book actually has gotten a Global Book Award for ghost fiction, and it also was an Amazon editor's pick for sci-fi and fantasy. And so I think that people get it, but for me, no. Mike, that was not. It's not overwrought.
Fears. That was not one of my fears when I first started writing it, because I was, it was like my first novel. I had written short stories and articles, but I was like I'm going to go. I'm going to go balls to the wall. I'm going to throw this out here because I want the reader, to have as much fun as I did writing. Mm-hmm. And so it's really a straightforward story in some ways about, but I think it is complex. It's not the ghost. I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's a fun ride, and there's lots of surprises, and
but it sounds like what you're saying is you didn't worry about the market. You didn't worry too much about things. You wrote this thing the way you wanted to write it, and you let it rip. The balls to the wall, a way of writing, and not worrying about, hey, does this sound like your typical pop novel out there?
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I think you're saying it better than I am. But yeah, no, when I was writing it, the story was always about Jack Kelly, and this story is about fear, but it's also about getting home. It's about getting back to his wife, Catherine, and his son, Mikey, and Stevie, and his daughter. And so in his head, even though he's been convinced by doctors that it's impossible for him to have had children and be married at 13, there's just so many little suspenseful things that I think will surprise the reader. But it's also very fascinating in the fact that I bring a lot of art into it, because Casper Greenstreet, the ghost, was an artist. Mm-hmm. And so there's art, there's New York, and there's this kid coming of age story. And the way he's coming of age is that he has abilities that he is discovering, and this time he feels like he's 13 again, but he's discovering these abilities that he didn't realize he had.
Gives him access into another dimension. So life takes on a more multi-dimensional form. He's not cut off from these things. Let me ask you: have you had critics who say this is autofiction? Autofiction is very popular. Nothing wrong with autofiction. It seems to be one of the best-selling forms of writing these days. But does it qualify as autofiction, or do you feel like, no, this isn't really about me? It's something other than that. I mean, you've had some of these experiences. So, autofiction obviously doesn't mean autobiography. It means I'm taking events in my life and I'm fictional to a larger degree, fictionalizing them.
No, you're the only person that has actually said that. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten, and here's another thing which could have been on my part, where we were talking about, did I think about these things? Was I making anything too complicated? Because the story is about spirituality. And one of the things that Jack does come in, it's the fear of heaven and hell, and when you react and when you don't react, and what you can stand up for. And I'm taking it into the paranormal horror genre rather than, maybe bullying or political. I took it to the fears, the monsters we create ourselves. And in this book, I made them real. But, I also write other stuff. But in the Jack Kelly series, that's his adventure. And I love that stuff. So, I loved it as a kid. I love it as an adult. I think that if you really see a good monster movie, so to speak, and I'm saying quote unquote, because the Exorcist or something that's Rosemary's Baby, that kind of stuff. It's the fear of that,
right, right,
and it's really about this kid at 13. And I also want the audience to be going through the series with him, going, so is the family real? I mean, is it real, or is it? And it's about bending time, and
well, and it is his imagination. I mean, there's also the question of, is a hallucination or imagination any less real than anything else? I mean, that's a metaphysical element to being a human being. We have dreams. Does that mean the dreams aren't real? We hallucinate. Take acid. We hallucinate. Does that mean it's not real? Let me ask you this. Are you looking at this as a trilogy, or is this something that can go on well beyond three books?
I think no, it definitely can go on. It definitely can go on more than that.
So talk about the Book of Demons then. That's number 2. That's your second one. So what happens, not so much what happens there, but there's an evolution. Jack was 13 in book 1, and book 2, the Book of Demons, what's his time frame in terms of his age?
Well, the Book of Demons is he just starts high school, and the Book of Demons, like I don't want to give too much away, because if I tell you what's going on in the Book of Demons, then it's kind of like, spoiler alert for the first book, and I don't want to do that. But I will say that there's a character that is a shapeshifter that is introduced in the Book of Souls that has more as
plays a bigger role in
the Book of Demons, and he's after something in the second book that Jack takes and finds and has in the first book, and it's that thing that he's possessing, that painting that has magical something, evil powers, and he wants that, and Jack has it.
I hear echoes here. I hear echoes of a portrait of Dorian Gray. I hear echoes of the Goldfinch. I hear echoes of because the Goldfinch has to do with a painting. And then there's also the Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan. It's interesting. It's interesting that I hear lots of different elements here. Now, you have a third book that's coming out this year. Is that right? The book number 3?
Yeah, we're hoping to have it out by Halloween. Yes, we're just. Do
you have a title for that one, or does that keep?
Yeah.
What's that one?
It's called Pandora's Box and the Lost Boys.
And can you just give us a gesture drawing of that one without giving anything substantive away?
Yeah. Well, Jack is now getting ready to graduate from high school. He has tried to remove himself from the things he battled in the first 2 books, because as you can imagine, right, you're a 13-year-old kid, all of a sudden you're aware of ghosts, you're aware of spirits, you're picking up people's thoughts, and so what happens in the first 2 books is very overwhelming in some ways to him, and he is sort of like been using like smoking pot and drinking to try and drown out the voices of the people he hears. And so he's going away with his friends for a weekend in a fictitious mountain resort in New York, but it's sort of like the Adirondacks. Mm-hmm. And shit's going to happen.
Now, you're from New York, you said, right?
Yeah, I grew up in New York City.
In New York City.
I've been in LA a long time.
Okay. I asked because I'm from upstate New York originally, and was wondering if maybe you ventured up into the Cortland, Binghamton, Ithaca area and all that. Is book 4 already doped out in your own head?
No, because I started writing. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just finished up. Book 3 is complete. I'm like a polisher. Like that's I don't think it's a problem, but I'm like, I'll keep going through it. I look to try and strengthen stuff if I find it. I went through it with an editor. Some of the things that they liked, really loved. I wanted to polish them more. Things that they didn't feel so strongly about, I went back to take another 10 looks. But in the meantime, I also finished a novel that I had started as a screenplay years ago, and it didn't have the same name then that it does now, but it's called Waking Sleeping Beauty, and I'm hoping to have that out in either early 26 or
and that's completely separate from the Jack Kelly series.
Completely separate from the series, yeah. And this Christmas, I came out with my second Christmas book, Christmas Stories Volume 2, which had 11 short stories.
Why are you writing Christmas stories? Tell me about that.
Okay, well, I love Christmas. I was fortunate to grow up. Like, I came from a big family. There was a total of I had 2 older brothers, 2 younger sisters. We grew up in the heart of New York City, like Kips Bay, Murray Hill, Gramercy Park area. We were working class. My father was a construction worker who worked on the World Trade Center. He was a foreman. And he did the old Pan Am building. And so my parents, I had a lot of chaos in my house when I was a kid for a variety of reasons.
As in good chaos or dysfunctional chaos?
Good and dysfunctional.
Both,
like,
yeah.
We were like, poster children. We were a poster family for dysfunctional. Like I had a really great mother, but she was like the quintessential good girl. My father was the quintessential bad boy. And that caused trouble in their relationship, which, spills into a household, of course. And then I had my oldest brother developed a drug problem very early on when he was going to a Christian Brothers school. And so that brought chaos into the house. Sure. So there was a lot of that. But my parents were, and they were great at holidays. They were very fun people. They were very loving people, with different backgrounds.
So you had great holidays. The Christmas holiday, right. You had great
Christmas
times.
As a kid. And then, unfortunately, my mom got sick when we were 14 with cancer and passed away 2 days before Christmas. So I've always had this it was always a dichotomy to me, because I've had some of my best memories at Christmas and some of my worst memories at Christmas. And I just find I like writing during the Christmas holidays, because it sort of magnifies things in everybody's life. Some people love the holiday, some people hate the holiday, right? You've got some of the best music and movies based around Christmas, and the food, and people, the decorations, and then you have the loneliness. Is that when you write your stories? Is that Christmas time to help amplify the holiday? Is that kind of the idea? Well, no. My first book I wrote, I know, I'm sorry, I'm not giving all, No, I'm making some guesses here, and that's fine. But the stories themselves are for what age group? Well, I think there's a mixture. I always put stories in that, parents can have their, younger kids read to, but they're mainly adult stories. It's about the challenges in life, even in the short stories, even though they end up, I think they're joyful and wonderful, but they're, it's always somebody with a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't write saccharine types of Christmas stories. I write a story of somebody, like in my Christmas book that just came out called A Very Pink Christmas. The lead character is this beautiful woman who you would think has everything, but she's also a shopping addict. And she comes across, there's a crime in the store, the cops come in, the guy runs, he drops everything, and he was stealing stuff, and she finds this pink gift card. And it becomes her story, because here's a woman with an addiction of shopping, and what is she going to do with a pink gift card that always has $1,199 on it, and it never goes off that dollar amount. So that's a whole story there about her growth, the season, what it means, what she learns. This is not Norman Rockwell painting and prose. But I think that. But you still have beauty. There's a happy ending. Let me put it that way. Yeah, it's still celebratory. Hopeful, right? If there's a hopeful ending for all of my characters. I also have a ghost story in it called Nowhere Falls, and it's about a guy who's hiding from Christmas, and he ends up in a town called Nowhere Falls, which he's like, this is not a place you're actually heading. It's the type of town you're going through to get to someplace else. Well, he stops in Nowhere Falls, and then things happen for him. So I like to think they're fun stories. They're entertaining stories. My whole job as a writer is not to necessarily teach anybody anything, but it's to entertain them. And that's what I love about short stories, because it's something you could sit down and have a cup of coffee and knock one off, and you're like, oh, wow, this is so fun. And then you start thinking of, Harlow Harper, or you start thinking of Dash Winters. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I love the idea of Christmas just because everything is so magnified during that season for everybody, even people that don't celebrate the season, even if it's not your
everybody's
religion.
Subject to it one way or another. Yeah, the music's playing.
It's so prominent, yes.
Yeah. Now, you also wrote a play called Conversations from the Sports Arena, which was performed at the HBO Theater in Hollywood. I'm not familiar with the HBO Theater, but it's a theater where they have live performances, I assume.
Yes.
And so what is Conversations from the Sports Arena?
So Conversations from the Sports Arena, I actually had done years ago. It was one of the first things I ever had produced. And it was just a short run, 99-seat theater. I don't even think the theater's there anymore. And it was honestly one of those theaters that they used to get the comedians ready for an HBO show. And I sent the script into them, and the gal that happened to be one of the decision makers was like, we don't usually do this, but I want to do this. So anyway, the Conversations in the Sports Arena is about my relationships with my brothers. But I only use two brothers. And it's about how you typically men, boys, is in my family, for sure, how you bond over sports. And it's about their life, the seasons of their life at different games, like a baseball game, a hockey game. And, it deals with drugs. It deals with what happens from drugs. One of the brothers ends up with AIDS from being an intravenous drug user. But it's I would say all of my stories have hope in it. That is the only thing that I like. What I try to project the most is that no matter what is happening in life, there's hope. And it's about the story of these brothers and their lives together and the mistakes they make and the love they have for each other and their family and the love they have for sports. And it's like one of them says, we were just lucky to be in the arena, and it's, I mean, are you a sports guy? Do you like going to baseball games or hockey games or football
I'm a
games
big sports fan. Yeah, I'm a big sports fan. Yeah.
So you understand, right?
Totally.
You make friends that way, right? Or you have the same team or,
Oh, we grew up arguing about sports all the time. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And we'd go to see Mets games or Yankee games, and so on, football and basketball and so on. But yeah, I totally get that. Let me ask you about this children's picture book. The title is Me and My Shadow. Why a picture book? You're a writer. I'm assuming there's some lines that go with some cut lines that go with the photographs.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, right. There are lines that go with the. This was like, and I had a horrible experience with the small publisher that I did the book with. So this. I have a thing for shadows, apparently, because there's shadows in the Book of Souls, and it's like the shadows of the Book of Souls are evil spirits, right? And they're called they're the shadow people. So there's a lot going on in the Book of Souls. But back to the Christmas book, to the children's book. It's like I've always loved the Jungian idea of your shadow, right? Like, your shadow personality, this maybe your, subconscious that you're not even aware of. And so I thought it would be fun in a Christmas book, in a picture book with a kid, is the boy, the lead in the Brody, in school, he starts to become popular, and then he becomes meaner, and he loves his shadow, they swing it on monkey bars and he sees his shadow and all of this stuff, and one day the shadow will knock it off his bedroom wall because he doesn't like who he's becoming. So that's that book.
Well, let's talk about the writing process. your writing regimen, you do a lot of writing, it sounds like. You do different kinds of writing. What's your writing regimen like in terms of, are you up in the morning? Are you an evening writer? Are you catch as catch can? Talk about it.
Okay, so my writing now is I write in the morning. That's when I have my most energy. That's when I do, I'll go to a yoga class, come back and write. So I like writing in the morning, and I like writing in the afternoon, but I will try and sit down at least 4 or 5 hours a day.
4 or 5 hours.
Yeah,
that's a big chunk of time. Wow, that's a commitment. Okay, talk about the actual. Do you write in the same place every day? Are you like, hey, this is my writing room, or do you go to coffee shops? Do you do anything on the move?
No, I have a little office in my house, and I write in there. I didn't always have that. I used to, because I worked for a living, and I would try and write on the side for many, 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 many years. Like I would take my lunch break in my, an office, and that's when I wrote my first Christmas book, and it was right after my brother died. And so I know you had asked me, do you write at Christmas time? And that was not at Christmas at all. It was, I think it was, I want to say it was, like January, February, and I started to write these Christmas stories because I was in a depression and I was trying to get out of it. And I didn't think I would produce a book of it. And then I had 9 stories and I only put 7 in the book. So yeah, now I am I have a little more freedom, and I work in the morning is my best time. It's when I'm probably the sharpest. But when I was reading the Book of Souls, because that I wrote any chance I could, because I was so in love with the character, Jack Kelly, that I would slide down into the office at 2:00 in the morning if I couldn't sleep, and I'd write about him. Or if something came up about Casper Green Street in, a dream, I was like, oh, I got to get up and get that out. So it's changed over the years. Before I just did whenever I could, when I wasn't working another job or something. Now I find myself able to work in the morning, and I'll keep a pad by my bed at night. So if I do have a really good lucid dream and it's about one of my characters, I'll write it down. But when I was writing the Book of Souls, I was writing any chance I could get, because I was just having so much fun with these guys, with the story. And so, like, if I got an idea in the middle of the night, I was up and downstairs and I was writing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned lucid dreaming. I mentioned that during the intro as well. Talk about lucid dreaming. Give us the definition of lucid dreaming, and how do you use it?
Okay. So my understanding of lucid dreaming, which I never realized was actually lucid dreaming because I could do this when I was younger, it's basically being aware when you're having a dream that you're in a dream. And like whatever it is you're dreaming about, I happen to have, and this is one of those things you and I were talking about, like, is it real or isn't it real? Like, I would have a lucid dream, and like my brother would show up after he passed away, and or my mother or cousin. Unfortunately, I've lost a lot of people, and they've come back to me in my dreams. I had a girlfriend in high school who passed away, and she came in one of my dreams, and I said to her, wait a minute, you're dead. And she said, yeah, I am, but I'm okay. And then another time she came back. Now, she had never met my cat because I dated her in high school. Then I hadn't seen her. I heard she had passed away. She came back in a dream one time and brought my cat Spanky for a visit to me. Now, I don't know, is that your brain sparking ideas? Or did you think of somebody? Did something trigger it? I always try to go, okay, why am I dreaming that? And I try to cleanse it to make it as pure as possible so that I know it is like in the dream, or that I believe that the spirit might have visited me, in the dream. And so what I learned much later, and I wish I would have knew this when I was a little younger, is I went to see somebody who was supposed to be really great at this stuff, and she said to me, "You've got to learn to ask questions in your dream." And so I've gotten fairly good at it, and then I got not so good at it, and then good at it again. Like, my sister Ellen had passed away, and she had kept coming back in her dream. I was dreaming about her constantly, and I said to her at one point, I'm like, why haven't you crossed over? Have you seen Michael? Have you seen Mommy? Have you seen Daddy? And she said, I still have things I have not finished on this side. And so I was learning how to ask questions in my dream, whether it's all like sparks in my own brain, or is this the universe sending these people to you? And so those kinds of things that have happened to me, I've tried to utilize, to write about them. And right now I write about them in, what did you called it, auto, which I really like, because I never thought of it like that. I just thought of like changing some of the stuff to make it fiction. And then I have to finish it for the audience, of course, the reader. So yeah, that's my idea of lucid dreaming. It's like knowing that the dream. I had the dream for one of the climax scenes in the Book of Demons, and I got up that night and came down and wrote it because it was just so bizarre. But it was my characters, and I was like, oh, this is just so cool. I don't want to forget it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't remember my dreams very often, but I have been in dreams where I realize this is a dream. Do you ever practice where you've got, say, a writing problem? It could be a life problem, it could be a writing problem, and you go to bed at night and before falling asleep, you think about it, and then you wake up with the answer or the solution.
Yeah, I would say there have been times that has happened, especially in the writing with those two books, because they were, supernatural. I would feel like that would happen, or it would sort of clear something up for me. Like it wouldn't bother me as much. Like I would have a dream, like trying to see if I could recall something, like I had a dream, and then wake up in the morning and maybe even see that the problem is not really that big of a problem. Like we have a saying in my house. If that's the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm in good shape, because I've been by people's deathbeds. I've almost lost a child twice. So when something happens that is annoying, a lot of times that will help me put it in its place of like, yes, it's upsetting, and yes, it's annoying. But if this is the worst thing that happens today, we're in good shape here.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about being a certified yoga instructor. What got you into yoga, and why did you decide to teach it rather than just be a practitioner?
Okay.
And does it play into your writing at all? Is that part of, is it meditative yoga is meditative, and the ability to concentrate, I would imagine, makes us better writers, to the extent that I think it helps attenuate things like procrastination or allowing yourselves to drift too much.
Yeah. Well, you said you're a yogi, right? You said you've been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah.
So I've been doing it a very long time. And Jack Kelly is a yogi. So yeah, he's in the book. He's learned to do yoga by somebody who was mentoring him, who's Mr. David, who was a psychic, and he just helped center himself. Because as somebody who does yoga, you know what I'm talking about. It's like I felt, I know it's not to sound like so dramatic, but like there was a time in my life I felt like yoga saved my life. My son had gotten so sick, and I thought it was going to be over, and then he came back, but I had so much fear, and part of the way I was separating that fear was when I was doing my yoga practice. Mm-hmm. And it was like, really, when I am as in touch with my spirituality the most. Even if and I love practicing with people because it's like there's so much energy in the room and something might come around to you, and it's like really prayer time for me. It's like meditation, like you're saying. Like it really helped me get rid of some of that fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to lose this kid, So I love it to this day. How I got into it, but I kept injuring myself at the gym when I was trying to lift weights. And one of the guys that I talked to in the gym said, hey, there's a woman upstairs, Andrea, who I still remember her name. And he goes, you should go up. And I think I might have been 39. And he said, you should try her class because of you keep injured. Because he's like, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm going to injure my shoulder again. I went up there, started really loving it. I then took a class with somebody else, and she happened to be in it. And she used to always say to me, if you're not breathing, it's not yoga if you're not breathing. And so she stood next to me in this class, and we practiced together at the same time. And I really got it. I was like, wow, this is like such a beautiful practice. And so as I was on my 59th birthday, I decided I was going to be a yoga teacher. So I took this 2-week intensive yoga class with this guy, Mike, who it's a long story, but he's a guy from New York, been teaching yoga out here. I met him on a plane. He was in front of me on a plane. We were coming back from New York. I didn't even know he was in New York. We started talking. He was like, oh my God, you'd be a great yoga teacher. I'm really not a great yoga teacher. I'll be honest with you. I love practicing. I like being a practitioner much more than I do being a teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I really haven't been teaching since the pandemic, because I was teaching at a homeless shelter, and I was teaching these men how to breathe and do some yoga that were, down on their luck. And so when the pandemic came, nobody was teaching, right? Everything was on Zoom, which I hated. And then I decided, like, you know what? I think I'd rather just go to class than actually teach. And I just teach now. I'm just teaching, like, I'll teach friends, or I'll, do it with my wife or my daughter or somebody like that. And I just became a grandfather. So I'm like, I'm going to start teaching her yoga when she's old enough to start moving. So yeah, that's the yoga part of it. But yeah, yoga helps me in so many ways. Mm-hmm. It was like that gift.
Yeah, let me ask you about Reiki as well. I looked it up here. Here's the artificial intelligence little readout on it. It says Reiki is a Japanese spiritual healing technique involving a Reiki master channeling universal life force energy to a client. This is typically done by lightly placing hands on or near the client's body in a series of positions. The theory is that this process can help balance energy, remove blockages, and promote healing and relaxation.
Yeah. So the way I got into that was also very accidental. I was bringing my son to therapies to help with his pain issues. And the woman there was a Reiki master. And she said, you know what? You should really do this for your son. So I became a Reiki 1 and then a Reiki 2. And I only tried to practice on Matthew. And that's my understanding of it is about the energy force, right? Because we all are made up of energy, right? Mm-hmm. In our bodies and stuff. So I just feel like you call it whatever you want. Like, some people don't, like, if they're very, like, they practice a religion, they may not understand, like, but we all have energy, like, I mean, how many times have you said, I really like that person, they have some really good energy. So that's my thought on the Reiki, because I started to do it on my son, and then I became a Reiki advanced practitioner because I ended up joining this group it used to be on Monday nights. Again, the pandemic changed everything because everything got closed down. But we had this like solid group, and there was a lot of guys in the group because a lot of and we still meet once a month, the 4 guys that I met there, and now we call it burgers and beers. We haven't been doing Reiki anymore, but
you're having burgers and beer and talking Reiki, huh?
So doing talking shit, yeah. And so that's funny. It was funny because, but I loved it and I could feel it, and everybody. I started doing Reiki on everybody, and the only person who wouldn't let me do Reiki on him, my son Matthew, who is the reason why I actually started taking the classes in the first place. He would not let me do more than like a minute or two. But everybody else, I got a table, I used to put it on my backyard, and I'd do it on my wife's, on my daughter. And like I said, we used to have a Reiki group every Monday night, and it was just fun because sometimes people would just, and I also was doing it on Saturdays with the guy who made me a Reiki practitioner, advanced practitioner. He used to work with cancer patients, and we used to work on them. And some of these people just love it, and I just think it's like a universal healing. If you're going in with your intent is to try and help somebody with everything, you're not going to cure them of cancer, but you might help them relax or help them, find that thing that's like we were just talking about with yoga when you're trying to, get through something. And I found it worked really well there. And I got to get back into practicing it again because I really did love it.
On your website, you said I could talk forever about, and you list off several things, one of which is spirituality. Is writing for you a spiritual practice, or does spirituality feed it in some way? What's the nexus between writing and spirituality?
Everything I write has spirituality in it, and sometimes I worried about it because the shock to me was that when Barnes and Noble put my book in the Grove and they put it in horror, and I was like, wow, I thought I was writing a book of spirituality, and here it is in horror. But I think everything, because look, I'm writing from my soul place, and I'm trying to create a character, and you can't create a character if you don't. If they don't have a soul, even if they're an atheist, right? There's still spirituality there because it's their lack. They're stating they don't believe in God, so the mention of God is bringing some kind of spirituality into it because you're saying I don't believe in God, but that's a conversation. So everything that I write I like to think I have. Is based in the foundation of spirituality. And I, as I said earlier,
but is that from a content standpoint, or is it from a practice standpoint? In other words, what I'm saying is a person can meditate and say, that's a spiritual practice. Or Absolutely. A person can write and say, that's a spiritual practice. Do you see the actual act of writing as a spiritual practice, or are you saying I write about ghosts and spirituality and the metaphysics?
No, both. I'm saying that when I'm writing, I'm trying to connect with the theme that I'm writing about, the character, and I'm bringing my spiritual life into it. And I was raised Catholic. I consider myself still a Catholic, but I consider myself a Zen Catholic because I love the idea of Buddhism. And Buddhism has so many philosophy. It's not a religion, but it's a philosophy. And so I try to combine those things. And so when I'm sitting down,
how do you do that though? How do you do that? Because Christianity is so heavy on dogma, and then Zen is kind of anti-dogma. It's about meditation and achieving enlightenment or Buddhahood. So do you not feel that the two of them are at odds in that way?
No, I don't.
I don't think they're at odds, because if I get to the true meaning of Christianity and I cut out the dogma of the Catholic Church or Christianity, and you go back to the original teaching of Jesus, what is he teaching? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The kingdom of the kingdom of heaven is within you, right? Well, that's what we all talk about. You know what they talk about a lot in when you're meditating, right? It's like being present, being coming from your true self, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm a klutz in that area.
Well, no,
but
I mean, I think you made a good point. I think you make a good point. The original Christianity was experiential. It had, there were the monasteries. They were meditating. They were chanting. There were incantations. Today, it's really become nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing but dogma, but it's basically, we'll tell you what to believe, and you put money in the collection plate, show up every Sunday, and so on. And there's no experience to it anymore. I'm talking about Catholic. I grew up a Catholic too. Catholicism or Christianity, where when you're talking about Zen Buddhism, it's all about experience. It's all about sitting and meditating, or you're doing the walking meditation or what have you. So I think you make a good point. That I read a book years ago that was about Christian mysticism, and it was really about those early years and the early years when it was about not a bunch of dogma, but actually connecting with the Holy Spirit.
Exactly, and it's interesting. But I talk about that in the Book of Souls, and that's what Jack is experiencing, because he even says to part of the thing is, one of the nuns is like, thinks that there's something evil there, and he is going like, no, I'm trying to make contact with God. I'm trying to make contact with the universe. There's nothing evil there. I just happen to have an ability. And then he asks the priest, and he says, well, do you believe in ghosts? Because that's all like voodoo and stuff like that. And the priest goes, well, I'd have to believe in ghosts, because before we said, you bless yourself in the name of the Father, and as a Catholic, that remember was the Holy Ghost. And he was like, if I believe in the Holy Ghost, then I have to believe in ghosts. I have to believe in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. And that's just a natural thing. I think that if you believe in God, you believe in the supernatural. You can define it any way you want, Absolutely. Right? You could define it any way you want. But for me, reading about Buddhism, and I'm not going to say I'm certainly a Buddhist, but I loved learning that stuff, because it sort of freed me from those dogma chains that you're talking about. Like, I'm like, and Jack even says that, you don't tell me how to believe in God. You know what I mean? Like, nobody can tell you how to believe in God. That's your. I actually wrote an article about it called It's highly personal. I wrote an article, and it was picked up in a spiritual magazine, and it was the language of God, and we all have a different language. God's not going to talk to you the same way he talks to me. You know what I mean, Mike? Yeah. You're not going to relate to the universe the exact same way I do. We might have very similar things, but it's like trying to make that connection. And that's where, like, when I say, I consider myself a Zen Catholic, it's because I'm not believing in an institution. I'm trying to get back to the original working. Yeah, if you're a follower of Christ, that's not an institution. That's in a sense, a guru. Although beyond a guru, you believe that he's an embodiment of God, or the Holy Spirit, or God. So that's not an institution. That's a relationship with the absolute. Talk about the power of love. That's another phrase on your website. Well, let me ask you this, though, because I think it ties in. At what point in your life did you come to the conclusion or realize that writing was your life force? If that's not an overstatement, maybe you don't agree with that phrasing. Well, I like it. I like it, and I think I'm going to try and really think about that, because it has. I will say this: in the last since I got serious and it's 2022 is when I wrote my first novel. That's a long time after dabbling, because I wrote screenplays and I used to pitch screenplays out here. But writing the novel was really the first time I understood what they meant. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And like really loving the idea of writing and what it makes me feel like when I'm doing it and making contact with these people. So I don't know if, like, I wouldn't say writing. Maybe I have to think about lighting. I think there's a lot of life forces, right? And for me, like love, when you like truly love somebody, and I'm not talking just strictly in a romantic way. I'm talking about like when you truly love somebody, you will want their happiness, not necessarily at your expense, but like you will want them to be happy and you want them to be fulfilled in a way because you love them. You want them to be happy. You want them to have the things that they want and need. So I feel like I'm, having children and now having a grandchild, that is as unconditional of a love that I think people can have. Me, I'll just speak for myself because some people won't have children and they still have that ability to do all of those things. But I think like when you're in a relationship with a spouse or a partner or something like that, there's a give and take there. Where with children, I always felt like, no, I love this child. I want the best for them. More, not, I don't want to sacrifice and not have a life, but I also want to make sure that their well-being and their needs are taken care of, and I'm willing to do that, sacrificing other stuff. So that's when I talk about what I think about with love. But the life force, like, you're giving me like a really good thought here, because I like that, because I have felt better over the last 5 years when I really made writing a full-time thing, like sitting down every day. And it's whether, that's why I love my books in libraries and stuff like that. I'm so happy, like when I see, this library's carrying my book, or somebody tells me, I got your book at a library. I'm like, I love it. Or when somebody gives me a review that's really good, not just because it's a good review, but because they got what I was trying to say. You know what I mean? And you want to be heard. I mean, I think we all want to be, from the time we're children. And I think, back in my day, they used to say kids were supposed to be seen and not heard, Right. And now I think sometimes kids are running the show in households, but, you know what I mean? Like, we all want to be heard, especially if we're writing. You want somebody to get it,
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody wants to be heard. And that expression can be, well, for kids, a lot of times being heard means acting out, causing trouble or what have you. But so now that writing's a full-time gig for you, it has become the centerpiece of your, not that it wasn't before, but if it wasn't before, it certainly is now the centerpiece of your life, it sounds to me.
It's of my working life, for sure. Yeah. It's a centerpiece of my working life. But I also think, like, it's like we all get a pie. And, like, you really don't want, unless it's a pizza pie, right? But I mean, then it could all be the same thing. But you want, like, pieces of your life to have meaning in different areas. Like, I'd like to be, I'd like to have readers. That's not the only thing I want. I want, my children to be happy. I want my wife and I to last. We've been together since we were kids, really. I want that to be as healthy as it can be as you get, aging. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my spiritual life. I want to make sure I can do yoga. I want to be one of those really old guys that are in the yoga class,
and still ambulatory, right? Yeah,
right. Still being able to do.
I always think of yoga as providing freedom of movement for a lifetime. You want to take care of your joints. You want to take care of your ligaments and tendons and stay flexible and strong, because you see, it's just amazing how you can see person far younger than yourself who struggles just to walk or stand up out of a chair. Then you got people in their 80s and 90s who have that freedom of movement. They can get up and move around, and that's everything to me, really.
I agree.
And most people, because you just can't stay healthy if you don't have movement. It's just critical. And you can't stay healthy if you can't, for a guy like you and a guy like me, we can't stay healthy unless I think that we're writing in a fruitful way. Kevin Moore, this has been a wide-ranging and interesting conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the program.
Well, thanks for having me, because I had a really enjoyable time. I mean, this is part of the life force, right? Like connecting with somebody, and it was a great conversation, and I'm walking away with thinking about what you just talked about with writing is your life force, and now I want to think about that, and because I do think it's part of it. I hope it is, because some days I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do for your this is my third act, so I want it to be a good one.
Amen to that, brother.